While eating Christmas turkey, my stepmom said, "You're moving to the basement, my son's taking your room." I just smiled and replied, "You mean the room I pay for? Along with the rent, bills, and food?" It was during Christmas dinner when my stepmom, mouthful of turkey, announced, "You'll have to move to the basement. My son's coming to live with us and he needs your room." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You mean the room I pay for? Along with the rent, bills, and food?" The next morning, I packed up and left without saying another word. Now, she won't stop calling because they just got hit with an eviction notice. So Reddit, buckle up, this one's a wild ride. I'm 24, female, and for the past 3 years, I've basically been the financial backbone for my dad and stepmom. Let me paint you a picture of the circus I called home. My dad remarried when I was 19 to this woman named Linda, 45, who brought along her precious son Eric, now 21. From the moment she stepped into our lives, Linda made sure everyone knew Eric was her pride and joy and the rest of us were just filler characters in their little family show. My dad's always been the keep everyone happy type, especially after my mom passed away when I was 16. I think he was so desperate not to be alone that he ignored every blinding red flag Linda waved around, and there were enough of them to start a parade. Living together started off simple enough. Dad owned a modest 3-bedroom place in the suburbs, nothing fancy but paid off and comfortable. I had the master bedroom since I'd been living there the longest. Dad and Linda took the second room and Eric got the third. Sounded fair enough, right? Yeah, not so much. See, Eric's what polite people might call a work in progress, and what I'd call a total waste of oxygen. The guy's 21 and has never held a job longer than 3 weeks. His resume could double as a joke book: fired from McDonald's for showing up high, quit Walmart because the customers were too rude, and got canned from a gas station for stealing energy drinks. But to Linda, her baby boy was just finding himself and exploring his options. Meanwhile, I've been grinding since I turned 18. Started in construction right after high school, worked my butt off and made my way up to supervisor. I don't make a fortune, but it's enough to live comfortably, or it would be if I wasn't supporting 3 other grown adults. The money situation crept up on me like most bad things do, slowly, then all at once. At first, Dad just asked me to pitch in for groceries since things were a little tight. No big deal. Then came the electric bill. Then water. Then rent. Before I knew it, I was paying for everything: utilities, internet, food, you name it. All while Linda and Eric contributed absolutely nothing. Dad worked part-time at a hardware store, but most of his paycheck went to his car payment and cigarettes. Linda claimed she was between opportunities, which is just a fancy way of saying unemployed and unbothered. And Eric? He was too busy being a professional disappointment. The real kicker, though, was that even though I was bankrolling the entire household, Linda treated me like some ungrateful freeloader. If I left a dish in the sink for 5 minutes, I got a lecture about respecting shared spaces. If I kicked off my work boots near the door after a long day, she'd roll her eyes and mutter about sloppiness. And don't even get me started on the snide comments about my boyfriend, Ryan. "Oh, Ryan's coming over again? I hope he's not staying for dinner, food's expensive, you know." Yeah, Linda, I'm aware. I pay for the food. Things started unraveling around Thanksgiving. Eric had been living with his buddy Tyler for about 6 months, and honestly, those were the best months I'd had in years. The house was quiet. The food lasted more than a day. No surprise guests, no attitude. It almost felt normal. But of course, Linda can't stand normal. Eric got kicked out of Tyler's place right before Thanksgiving. Something about not paying rent and bringing sketchy people over. Color me shocked. Naturally, he came crawling back home with this sob story about how Tyler was jealous of his success. What success? The dude's biggest accomplishment was leveling up in World of Warcraft. Linda, of course, went full mama bear, acting like her boy was some soldier returning from war instead of a lazy adult who couldn't manage rent. She started talking about making him feel welcome again, planning this whole homecoming like it was a national event. That's when things really went downhill. "We need to make Eric feel comfortable," she said one night while I was just trying to eat in peace. "He's been through so much." "Through what?" I asked, finding out that choices have consequences. The glare she gave me could have melted steel. "He's family," she snapped. "We take care of family." And by we, she meant me. And by take care, she meant fund completely. Christmas prep hit a whole new level of crazy. Linda transformed into a Pinterest mom, tinsel, garlands, the works, and bought Eric about $300 worth of gifts using money she didn't have. When Dad asked how she managed it, she just smiled and said, "Christmas is about giving. Besides, Eric deserves nice things." Meanwhile, my gift was a $15 gas station card and a lecture on gratitude. The irony was thicker than her makeup. A week before Christmas, Linda started dropping hints about the living space again. "It's just so cramped with Eric home," she'd sigh. "I wish everyone could be more comfortable. Some people just take up more space than others." I ignored her at first, hoping it would pass. But Linda doesn't let things pass. She doubles down until she gets what she wants. Eric, on the other hand, acted like he owned the place. He ate everything in sight, left trash everywhere, and brought random people over like it was a frat house. I'd get home from a 10-hour shift to find my leftovers gone and Eric passed out on the couch surrounded by his equally useless buddies. "Did you guys eat my dinner?" I asked one night, standing in the doorway, still covered in dust from a 10-hour shift. Eric didn't even bother looking up from his phone. "Yeah, girl, we were hungry. There's like crackers or something in the pantry." I just stared at him. "I worked all day and saved that food for when I got home." He shrugged. "Chill out. It's just food. I'll get you back next time." Asterisk narrator voice. He would absolutely not get me back next time. Asterisk what really blew my mind though was Linda actually taking his side. When I complained about it, she told me I was being selfish and unwelcoming to family. When I reminded her I'd bought the food, she said I was keeping score, and that real families share everything. Funny how real families apparently didn't share the bills. As Christmas got closer, the pressure about my room started ramping up. Linda began making little digs about how my room was too big for one person, and how Eric needed a proper space to get his life together. She started hinting that I might be more comfortable in the basement. Now the basement wasn't some cozy hideaway. It was an unfinished dungeon with bare concrete walls, a musty smell, a wobbly pull-out bed, and a single tiny window that looked straight into the neighbor's garbage cans. Real glamorous. Eric's trying to turn his life around. Linda insisted one afternoon while waving her wine glass like she was giving a TED Talk. He needs an environment that helps him focus on his goals. I asked, "What goals?" "The goal to play Call of Duty for 16 hours straight?" She didn't flinch. "He's exploring entrepreneurship opportunities." Which, translated from Linda speak, meant he's thinking about maybe starting a YouTube gaming channel someday. Inspiring stuff. I kept shooting down the idea of swapping rooms, but that only made her double down. She started dropping passive-aggressive comments in front of Tom, my dad, about how some people just weren't willing to make sacrifices for family. Dad, ever the peacemaker, would mumble something about finding a solution before disappearing into the garage. A week before Christmas, I overheard Linda on the phone with one of her friends. "I don't know what to do," she sighed dramatically. "She's so stubborn and selfish. Eric needs that room but she won't give it up. We've given her a place to live all these years." I almost choked. Asterisk given me a place to live? Asterisk I was literally paying for the roof over their heads. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. Then Christmas Eve rolled around and Linda went all out. The house was full of her relatives, people I barely knew, stuffing their faces with food I'd paid for, all while complimenting Linda on what a wonderful hostess she was. Eric was in rare form, playing the part of the charming prodigal son. He'd actually put on clean clothes and was bragging about his business ventures and investment plans to anyone who'd listen. I stayed quiet, just trying to survive the evening, though I could tell from Linda's smug little smile that she was planning something. Dinner went smoothly at first. Everyone praised Linda's cooking, even though Tom had roasted the turkey and I'd bought every single ingredient. Eric kept talking about his entrepreneurial spirit, somehow managing to skip over the part where he'd been evicted from Tyler's apartment. Then came the gift exchange. Eric unwrapped present after present from Linda. Brand new gaming gear, expensive sneakers, a leather jacket that probably cost more than my car insurance. She kept saying, "He deserves the best." My gift, on the other hand, was a $20 Home Depot gift card. "It's practical," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "Since you're so handy with tools." Translation. Asterisk you're the help, not the family. But the real show was still to come. After presents, when everyone was lounging around full of food and wine, Linda stood up and clinked her glass. Her smile was stretched so tight it looked painful. "I have an announcement," she said in that syrupy tone she used before dropping a bomb. "We're going to be making a few changes around here to better accommodate our growing family." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was going. "Eric has decided to move back home permanently," she continued proudly, "so he can focus on his career." She looked at him like he'd just been awarded the Nobel Prize. "And since he'll need proper space for his business ventures, we're going to reorganize the sleeping arrangements." I could feel every eye in the room turning toward me. "So," Linda said, flashing that fake sweet smile, "we've decided you'll be moving into the basement. It'll be perfect for you. More privacy, your own little space. And Eric really needs the master bedroom for his work." The room went dead silent. Tom stared at his plate like it might save him. Eric tried not to grin. And Linda's relatives looked from her to me like they were watching live drama unfold. I sat there, stunned for a second, just letting the sheer audacity of it sink in. She was actually trying to evict me from my own room in front of a crowd on Christmas Eve in the house I paid for. "No," I said finally. Linda's smile twitched, then reappeared, even faker this time. "Sweetie, this is what's best for everyone." "No," I repeated. "I'm not moving to the basement." Her voice sharpened like a knife. "We've already discussed this." "No," I said again. "You've suggested it." "I've said no every single time." Her face was turning red, but she was trying to keep her composure in front of her audience. "Well, we're discussing it now. And as the mother of this household, I know what's best." That was it. I stood up, heat rising in my chest. "Mother of this household?" I shot back. "You mean the household I pay for? The rent I cover? The bills I handle? The food I buy, the same food you and your son eat?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. The entire room went silent. Linda's relatives stared at me wide-eyed, forks frozen midair. "You seriously think marrying my dad gives you the right to kick me out of my room? For your unemployed son who got kicked out of his last place for not paying rent?" "That's enough," Linda snapped, dropping her fake sweetness like a mask. "This is my home too, and I will not be disrespected by some ungrateful child." "Your home?" I shouted. "Really? Show me one bill you've paid, one grocery run you've covered, one single expense you've handled in this so-called home of yours. You contribute nothing but drama and entitlement." Tom finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Maybe we should talk about this privately." "No," I said, cutting him off. "Let's handle it right here since Linda decided to make her announcement in front of an audience." I turned back to her, my pulse pounding. "You want me to move to the basement? Fine. Here's my counteroffer. I move out completely. Let's see how long you last without my income." "You're being dramatic," Linda said, but her voice was shaking now. "You're not going anywhere. You'll move to the basement and that's final." I looked around at the stunned faces around the table. Her sister looked like she wanted to vanish under the tablecloth. Tom was still staring at his plate like it had all the answers, and even Eric looked uneasy for the first time all night. "Actually," I said calmly, "you're right, this conversation is over." I walked upstairs, leaving behind a room full of silence and tension. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Linda's voice drifting up behind me, trying to explain to her relatives that I was just going through a phase, that young people don't understand responsibility. The irony could have choked a horse. I stayed in my room for hours listening to the sounds of people leaving, the front door opening and closing, until the house finally went quiet. Around midnight there was a knock. "Can we talk?" Tom's voice was soft, weary. I opened the door. He looked worn down, older than his 52 years, the weight of all his choices sitting heavy on his shoulders. "Look," he said, sitting on the edge of my desk chair. "I know Linda came on a little strong tonight." I let out a bitter laugh. "A little strong? She tried to publicly evict me from my own room on Christmas Eve." He sighed deeply. "She's just worried about Eric. He's had a rough time, and she thinks having his own space will help him get back on his feet." I folded my arms. "Dad, I pay the mortgage on this house. I pay for the utilities, groceries, internet, everything. And she wants to shove me in the basement so her unemployed son can have my room? You don't pay the mortgage, he said weakly. You just help with expenses. I grabbed my phone, opened my banking app and handed it to him. Dad, look. I transfer you $1,800 every month. Your mortgage payment is $1,200. Where do you think the other $600 goes? He stared at the screen for a long moment, his face paling. I didn't realize you were covering that much. I've been covering everything for 3 years, I said. Linda and Eric don't pay a dime. Actually, scratch that, they're a net loss. They eat twice as much as they contribute. He rubbed his temples, silent for a while. Finally, he looked up, eyes tired and defeated. What do you want me to do? She's my wife. Eric's her son. We're a family now. What I want, I said, is for you to act like my dad and stand up for me when your wife tries to kick me out of the room I pay for. What I want is for you to recognize that the only reason you still have a roof over your head is because I'm footing the bill. He flinched at that, but he didn't deny it. Linda's not going to drop this, he muttered after a long pause. Once she's decided something, she digs in. Then she's going to be very disappointed, I said. He left after that, shoulders slumped, and I sat on my bed staring at the half-decorated Christmas tree in the corner. That night I made up my mind I was done. I spent the next few hours laying out my exit plan. 3 years of being treated like an ATM while being disrespected in my own home. 3 years of watching Eric sit around doing nothing while being praised like he hung the moon. 3 years of Linda's manipulation, guilt trips and fake smiles. I was finished. The next morning was tense. Linda was pretending everything was fine, but her eyes were hard, her jaw tight. Eric was quieter than usual, probably realizing his gravy train was about to derail. Tom was moving through the kitchen like he was walking on eggshells. Over breakfast, Linda made one last attempt to manipulate me. I've been thinking about last night, she said in her practiced, calm tone. Maybe we didn't approach things the right way. But the fact remains, Eric needs proper space to build his career, and you'd probably enjoy more privacy downstairs. I didn't even look up from my plate. My answer hasn't changed. Well, what if we made it nicer down there? She tried. We could finish the basement, put in new carpet, better lighting, maybe even a proper bathroom. With what money? I asked flatly. The money I give you every month that barely covers the bills as it is? Her smile twitched. We could take out a small loan. I let out a humorless laugh. A loan you'd expect me to pay back, no doubt. Her fake patience snapped. You're being unreasonable, she hissed. This is about family, and you're acting like it's all about money. It is about money, I shot back. The money I earn. The money that keeps this place running. And it's about respect, which you've never once shown me. Eric finally spoke up, his voice hesitant. Look, girl, I don't want to cause trouble. Maybe I could just stay in the basement. Absolutely not, Linda barked, spinning toward him. You deserve better than that basement. You need a proper space to focus on your goals. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Goals? I'd love to hear more about these mysterious goals that require my bedroom. Eric mumbled something about starting a streaming channel and maybe investing in crypto. Linda nodded like he just announced he was running for president. And right then I knew for sure I was done. These people were absolutely delusional. I spent the next few days scouring apartment listings and finally found a small one-bedroom place about 20 minutes from work for $900 a month. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, affordable, and most importantly mine. No more walking on eggshells. No more freeloaders eating my food or telling me where I could live. I didn't tell a soul about it. I quietly put down the deposit, signed the lease, and scheduled my move for January 2nd. I figured I'd give them until New Year's to come to their senses, though I wasn't holding my breath. Instead, the pressure ramped up. Linda kept harping on about how selfish I was and how real families make sacrifices. Eric acted like the room swap was already official, talking about how he'd set up his gaming station and asking if I needed help moving my stuff to the basement, like he was doing me a favor. Tom, ever the mediator, tried coming up with compromises that all ended with me losing something. Maybe I could share the master bedroom with Eric, or maybe they could turn the garage into a cozy space for me, or maybe I could just take the basement for a few months while they figured things out. Every idea was a different version of me getting screwed over while Eric got exactly what he wanted. New Year's Eve was my breaking point. Linda threw a big party and filled the house with her friends. She spent the entire night complaining about me. How difficult I was, how stubborn young people are these days. She painted herself as this poor, long-suffering stepmother trying to hold the family together while dealing with her ungrateful stepdaughter. Her friends nodded along, telling her how patient she was and sharing their own horror stories about selfish kids. Meanwhile, Eric was holding court in the living room, bragging to his buddies about how he was going to redecorate his new room, mapping out where his gaming setup and mini fridge would go. He was talking like it was already a done deal. That night, after the guests left and the house finally went quiet, I made up my mind. No dramatic fights, no big goodbye. I was just going to leave and let them deal with the fallout. Let them see how far family gets them when their walking paycheck isn't footing the bills anymore. On January 1st, I started moving things little by little, important papers, my clothes, a few keepsakes, the essentials I'd need for work. I left the furniture behind so I wouldn't raise suspicion. Linda and Eric were too hungover to notice anything anyway, and Tom was working. It was perfect. The next morning, January 2nd, I woke up early, loaded the last of my stuff into my car, and placed my house key on the kitchen counter beside a note that read, "Since you've made it clear this isn't my home anymore, I've found one where I actually am. Good luck with the bills. Your former ATM." Then I left. No speeches, no tears. I just drove away and didn't look back. My phone started blowing up around noon once they finally noticed I was gone. First Tom called, panicked and confused. Then Linda, furious and demanding that I come home right now. Then Eric, suddenly acting like family mattered. I ignored all of them and focused on setting up my new apartment. It felt incredible being in a place that was truly mine, quiet, peaceful, and free of manipulation. The voicemails, though? Pure entertainment. Linda's tone shifted as the day went on, from righteous anger to awkward bargaining to full-blown panic. "This is ridiculous, you need to come home right now." Then, "Okay. Maybe we can work something out." Then, "Please call me back, we need to talk about this like adults." Finally, by evening, she was practically begging. "Fine, you can keep your room. Eric can stay in the basement. Please, we need you to come back. We can figure this out." Tom's messages were more desperate than angry. "Please call me, sweetheart. We can work this out. Linda's willing to compromise." Funny how fast people learn the meaning of compromise when their meal ticket drives away. I finally answered Tom's call that night. "Where are you?" he asked immediately. "Linda's worried sick." "At my new apartment," I said. "You know, the one I can afford because I have a job." "You can't just leave like this," he said. "We're family." "Family doesn't try to kick each other out of their rooms," I shot back. "Family doesn't drain one member dry financially and then act like they're doing her a favor." Linda was just trying to help Eric get back on his feet. I laughed bitterly. "No, Dad. She was trying to hand her son my room while I paid for it. Big difference." He was silent for a while before asking, "What do you want us to do? How do we fix this?" "You don't," I said flatly. "This is fixed. I'm done. I'm not coming back and I'm not paying your bills anymore. You, Linda, and Eric can figure out how to be adults and support yourselves. But the mortgage? Figure it out," I interrupted. "Get jobs. Cut expenses. Do what the rest of us do when we can't afford our lifestyle." I hung up and felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was like taking my first real breath in years. The calls kept coming for a few more days, getting more desperate each time. By day 3, Linda was leaving tearful voicemails, saying she was sorry, that she never meant to make me feel unwelcome. Too little, too late. The real panic hit when the bills started rolling in. See, I hadn't just been paying the mortgage, I'd been covering everything: electric, water, gas, internet, cable, groceries, you name it. On January 8th, Tom called again, his voice strained. "The electric company called," he said. "They said our payment's overdue." "Probably because I'm not paying it anymore," I said. "What are we supposed to do?" "You could start by paying it yourselves," I said. "With the money you earn from your jobs." "My paycheck barely covers my car payment and insurance," he muttered. "Then get a second job," I said. "Or Linda could get a first one." Or maybe Eric could contribute something besides dirty dishes and attitude. This is serious. They're threatening to shut off our power. Then pay the bill, Dad. It's not complicated. He hung up after that, probably to go grovel to Linda about how to fix their sudden financial crisis. The next few weeks were like watching a live documentary on entitled people meeting reality for the first time. My phone buzzed constantly with updates on their downfall. The internet went first when they missed the payment, and Eric apparently had a meltdown when he couldn't play his video games. Then Linda called me crying, saying I was cruel for punishing them like this. After that, the cable got cut, the water company sent a shut-off notice, and the electric company finally pulled the plug, literally. Through it all, Linda kept calling and begging me to come back. She dropped the fake superiority act and was now in full desperation mode, leaving voicemails promising me anything if I just started paying their bills again. "You can have the master bedroom," she sobbed in one message. "Eric doesn't mind the basement. We've worked it all out. Please, we know we made mistakes. We'll do better. Your father's having chest pains from stress. Do you want that on your conscience?" I had to hand it to her. She was creative with the guilt trips, but I wasn't budging. They'd made their bed, and they could lie in it, preferably in that basement Eric didn't mind so much. The breaking point came in February when Dad called, his voice barely above a whisper. "We got an eviction notice." I can't say I was surprised. "How far behind are you?" I asked. 2 months. "We tried to make payments, but without your help." "Without the money I was giving you, you mean?" "We can't lose the house," he said. "This is where your mother and I lived. It's your childhood home." That one hit harder than I expected, but I pushed through. "Then you should have thought about that before trying to kick me out of my room." "Linda's willing to apologize," he said quickly. "Publicly, in front of anyone you want. She knows she was wrong." "Dad, it's not about apologies anymore. It's about accountability. You're all adults. I'm not your personal bank account." "But what are we supposed to do?" he asked, voice cracking. "Get jobs. All of you. Cut expenses. Sell things you don't need. Do what everyone else does when they can't afford their lifestyle." "Eric's been looking for work for 3 weeks now after 3 years of nothing," he offered weakly. "Color me unimpressed," I said. By then he was crying, and as much as it hurt, I couldn't save them from themselves. "Please," he whispered. "We need help." "You need to help yourselves," I said. "I'm not responsible for 3 adults who refuse to grow up." When I hung up, I felt everything: anger, guilt, sadness, but above all, freedom. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't responsible for anyone's bills but my own. My life became simple and peaceful. I worked, came home to my own apartment, cooked my own meals, and actually got to eat all of them. No Sandra lectures, no Owen messes, no fake apologies. Just quiet. The eviction went through as expected. Dad called to tell me they had to vacate by the end of February. "We found a place," he said. "A 2-bedroom across town. It's not much, but we can afford it on my salary." "What about Linda and Eric? Are they working now?" "Linda got a part-time job at a grocery store. Eric's still looking." Translation: Linda finally met reality, and Eric was still living in denial. "How are you managing?" I asked. "It's tight. Really tight. Between her paycheck and mine, we cover rent and basic utilities, but that's about it." "Welcome to how most people live, Dad." He sighed. "I know you're angry, but losing the house, it's been rough." "I imagine it has. Maybe now you understand why I was frustrated about supporting everyone while being treated like garbage." There was a long pause. "Linda wants to talk to you," he said finally. "She's been asking me to call you for weeks." "What could she possibly want?" "She wants to apologize," he said. "For real this time. Not just to get you back." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them for coffee, neutral ground, public place, easy exit if things went south. The Linda who showed up barely resembled the smug woman who'd once tried to throw me in the basement. She looked older, tired, worn out by life. "Working retail will do that to you." "Thank you for meeting us," she said quietly, not looking me in the eye. "I'm only here because Dad asked," I said flatly. "You've got 15 minutes. She took a shaky breath. "I understand now. What I did was wrong. You were supporting us, and I treated you like a burden." Go on, I said. I was so focused on Eric and what I thought he needed that I ignored what you were already doing for us. You were the only responsible adult in the house, and I punished you for it. Her voice cracked and for once it sounded genuine. What changed your mind? I asked. Her eyes glistened. Living without your help. Trying to survive on minimum wage and your father's part-time pay. Realizing that everything I took for granted, the house, the food, the heat, was because of you. And Eric? I asked. Is he contributing now? Her jaw tightened. He's adjusting to the new reality. It's been difficult for him. Translation, still useless. He got a part-time job at a pizza place, Dad added. It's not much, but it's something. Probably the first honest work that kid had ever done. Amazing what desperation can accomplish. Look, Linda said finally, voice trembling. I know an apology doesn't fix the past, but I just want you to know I see it now. I see everything. Linda continued. I'm not asking you to come back or support us again. I know I burned that bridge, but I wanted you to know that I realize how wrong I was and how much we owe you. You owe me about 50 grand, I said flatly. That's roughly what I spent supporting you guys over 3 years. The number hit the air like a brick. Tom went pale. We can't pay that back, he said weakly. I know. I'm not expecting you to. I just want you to understand what it actually cost me. Silence hung over the table for a while. Finally, Linda spoke again. Is there any chance that someday we could rebuild our relationship? Not financially, she added quickly. Just as family. I thought about it. A part of me missed my dad, missed the idea of family, but a bigger part remembered the exhaustion, the disrespect, the feeling of being used. Maybe, I said after a moment. But it would take time, and major changes from everyone. What kind of changes? Tom asked. Eric needs to become a functioning adult who supports himself. You both need to keep working and actually contribute. And you all have to understand that I'm not your backup plan. We understand, Linda said immediately. Do you? I asked. Because 3 years of treating me like an ATM says otherwise. Linda flinched but didn't argue. I'm working now, she said quietly. I'm paying my own bills. I know what it's like to struggle, and I'll never take help for granted again. And Eric? I asked. He's learning, Tom said carefully. Eric's 21, Dad. He shouldn't still be learning how to be an adult. You're right, Linda admitted. I enabled him too long. I thought I was helping, but I was really just holding him back. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. Maybe getting evicted had finally knocked some sense into them. Here's what I'm willing to do, I said after thinking for a bit. In 6 months, if Eric's kept his job and you've both proven you can support yourselves, we can meet for dinner. See how it goes. Linda's eyes welled up. That's more than we deserve. Yeah, I said. It is. I left that coffee shop feeling conflicted. Part of me was glad they were finally taking responsibility, but another part was still angry about how long it took. 6 months later, Linda called to ask if my offer still stood. Apparently, Eric had kept his pizza job and even gotten promoted to shift supervisor. Linda was still at the grocery store and had earned a small raise. Tom was working full-time again at another hardware store. We're not living comfortably, Linda admitted, but we're making it work. Eric even pays rent now. That surprised me. Maybe the kid had finally grown up a little. We met for dinner at a modest restaurant they chose and paid for. Everyone seemed different. Linda was quieter, more humble. Eric actually talked instead of mumbling. Tom looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. How's the new place? I asked. Small, Tom said with a small laugh, but manageable. Kind of nice, actually. And you, Eric? How's work? He smiled, a real smile. Better than I expected. It's nice having my own money, you know? Feels good to buy things myself. The job sucks sometimes, but it's worth it. He's even saving up for his own apartment, Linda added proudly. I could tell she was genuinely proud, not for show but for real. Yeah, Eric said. I'm hoping to move out by the end of the year. Be fully independent. That was a version of him I'd never seen before, one with direction and drive. That's great, I said, and I meant it. Dinner went better than I'd dared hope. We didn't rehash the past, just talked about life in the future. For the first time in years, it felt like maybe we could have a normal family again. As we were leaving, Linda pulled me aside. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said softly. "But losing your respect was my biggest regret. Not the house, not the comfort. You. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was something. Now we meet for dinner once a month or so. Linda's still working and seems genuinely changed. Eric moved into his own studio and is even talking about going back to school part-time. Tom's happier than I've seen him in a decade. As for me, I'm still in my one-bedroom apartment, still working construction, still taking care of only myself. I've been seeing Ryan, a guy from work, and he actually appreciates me for who I am. Sometimes people ask if I regret walking away when my family needed me most. I tell them no. They didn't need help, they needed consequences. Enabling them would have just kept them stuck. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let people face the fallout of their own choices. The house eventually sold to cover what they owed, and Tom said it was a relief to finally let it go. Linda's full-time at another grocery store now, earning steady pay, and finally understanding what it means to pull your own weight. Eric's still at the pizza place but also doing some freelance graphic design on the side. Turns out when you stop hiding behind excuses, you actually discover skills you didn't know you had. And me? I've never been happier. My apartment is quiet, peaceful, and mine. Ryan and I spend weekends fixing it up, cooking dinner, laughing, enjoying a life that feels earned. Sometimes I think about everything that happened and realize leaving wasn't just about walking away from Linda and Eric. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my independence, and my peace. For years, I let guilt tie me to people who didn't value me. But the moment I chose myself, everything changed. Now I carry only my own responsibilities, my own joy, and a deep understanding of one simple truth. Saying no isn't selfish, it's survival.